MAME phase.
As an arcade operator, what do you do when your once popular cabinet is old news? When the game that once drew in crowds is now considered something where the only people willing to drop coins in them are the losers and has-beens wanting to show off skills that nobody even cares about anymore because everybody else has moved on? When old was just old, before old was retro, like many now classic games, that's the boat Donkey Kong found itself in. The answers for operators at the time? Conversion kits, a brand new game for a fraction of the price of a new machine. Donkey Kong itself was no stranger to the idea of conversions. Many Donkey Kong PCBs had started life as a much less successful Nintendo game, Radar Scope, but it is the aftermarket conversions that will carry this narrative forward. Donkey Kong had a number of conversion kits available, often games which were also available in some form on other arcade platforms, sometimes where they originated and other times merely different conversions. Hunchback is maybe one of the better known games of the bunch. Originally made for Century Electronics' CVS platform, commonly found in the UK, it made its way, albeit in a rather ugly form, to Donkey Kong hardware. Herbie at the Olympics, known on other platforms as Hunchback Olympics, would also make the jump, giving the option of a track and field style game for your Donkey Kong conversion. Superbike, also coming from the CVS platform, gave operators the choice of a Moon Patrol style game to put in their cabinets. Hero in the Castle of Doom is your more typical maze game, but one that would definitely feel more in its place on a home computer rather than in an arcade, but again it made sure a variety of options were available. Eight-Ball Action was a take on Video Pool, very similar to Konami's Video Hustler. Even EPOS Corporation got in on the action and offered Dracton, which was a somewhat downgraded version of their Revenger 84 title developed for their own hardware. The racing genre wasn't skipped over either, with EPOS also offering Street Heat, putting you in the seat of a police vehicle and letting you blow everything else off the road. Many of these conversions made changes to the original hardware. For example, when installing the conversion kit, you may have been required to replace the main Z80 CPU with the Signetics 2650 at the same time as swapping the ROMs out. Some of these conversions even added extra protection devices to stop others from cloning the conversion kits. This video, however, is about one specific conversion kit, a 1985 conversion of Donkey Kong to a game called Special Forces, or as the Marquis and Flyer call it, Special Forces Kung Fu Commando. This kit was put out by Senko Industries together with Magic Electronics. The subtitle is maybe the biggest clue as to what this game was meant to be an alternative to, and that is quite obviously IREM's Kung Fu Master, which had proven to be a big success in the arcades a year earlier. What makes this kit a little different is that it bypasses the usual Donkey Kong audio hardware, including the sound CPU, and instead drives its own audio hardware, an SN76496, using the main CPU instead. This detail in the emulation is what had been missed over the years. It wasn't too obvious to anybody without a board at hand how the audio was being handled, and the lack of a sound CPU ROM in the ROM set was suspicious, although as we now know, was not incorrect. Knowledge of the correct sound chip and confirmation that there was no sound program present on the PCB had been confirmed about a year ago by Phil Bennett and had been on my list of things to look at, but I was beaten to the punch this time by AJR, who fixed up the emulation in MAME a few days ago, giving it the proper emulated audio for the first time. I tend to see sound as a key part of any game, so if a game is emulated and there is only silence to accompany it, I prefer to simply not play it until the time sound is emulated, and that was the case with this game for me. The sound, now that it is emulated, I think it's fair to say is not the most original. The background loop, it would be polite to say, borrows as much from the accompaniment of Kung Fu Master as the rest of the game does. I think it would be fair to call the rest of the sound serviceable. There are effects where there need to be effects, such as coining up, gunshots, walking, and audio feedback to let you know when you've hit an enemy. There's no sampled speech here as you'd find in Kung Fu Master because the audio hardware being used lacks support for anything of that nature. The gunplay is really where this game differs from Kung Fu Master, at least for the first half of the game. While in Kung Fu Master you're dealing with fast kicks and punches at close range, here your bare-chested Commando is sniping enemies and projectiles off at a distance. I say for the first half of the game because for the second half of the game he appears to have decided that a gun is no longer necessary for taking down these terrorists, instead opting for the more traditional combination of kicks and punches. I guess they don't call him Kung Fu Commando for nothing? The game does start to fall apart there though, because the moves just aren't quick and snappy enough, so your timing has to be spot on. It was never the most responsive of games even in the first half, and relying heavily on close range combat in the second half exacerbates that flaw. Even prior to that, the controls are a little unintuitive at times, as in some situations up is jump and in other situations up will aim your gun upwards. This does not depend on if you're carrying a gun or not, but rather the enemy type you're facing. This is definitely a game where Donkey Kong's 4-way stick will have been swapped out for an 8-way stick, as taking out enemies on the roof from below using angled shots is a key part of the gameplay. I just hope that when the machine inevitably got converted back to a Donkey Kong, because this proved even less popular, that the proper 4-way stick was restored too, because it would be absolutely terrible if someone were to think they were setting world records on Donkey Kong, but in fact be using a non-original controller, disqualifying them from doing so. The game did have a sequel, running on the exact same hardware. I played it for a bit, and the only difference I could notice personally is that it has the number 2 on the title screen. Is Special Forces worth playing? Probably not, but if you do play it, at least now you can play it with sound, which at the very least means it's twice as good as it was before. Is the game being worth playing the point? Again, not really. As mentioned, these conversion kits inevitably got removed, and if you have a Donkey Kong PCB in 2023, it's going to be running Donkey Kong, because that gives it the most value, and even back in the day, most operators realised that, junked the conversion kits, and as a result, they're fairly uncommon. Finding original references for them is therefore especially difficult, so having the games correctly represented in MAME is important, and really is the only place you're going to see them these days. Any remaining time on this video will just be footage of the game running, so I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to watch and listen, and I hope to catch you on the next one.